just in terms of the 360 images and the measurements combined, is going to have almost unlimited possibilities in terms of automation, and automating the listing process, automating your listing descriptions. That's all possible with the technology now.
You're listening to the Real Estate Sessions. I'm your host, Bill Risser with Fidelity National Title, Tampa District. Thanks for tuning in as we uncover the stories of leaders in our industry. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 207 of the Real Estate Sessions podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for telling a friend. Today we're going to go back to the Inman crowd. I've had so many guests come to the show from my attending the Inman Connect event. I can't say enough about this event. If you've got an opportunity to get out there, go check it out. And today we're going to talk to Alex Gustafson. Alex is the founder of KoaWare and a few other things along the way. And we're going to chat with him about what he's doing in the real estate space. Alex, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Bill.
Yeah. Well, you reached out to me. I loved it. You reached out and you said you wanted to get together at Inman Connect in Las Vegas. And the first thing I want to ask you is, have you been a regular attendee of Inman? Has Inman been a big piece of what's going on with your company?
Yeah, I think I've been going to Inman for the last 3 or 4 years. We started out, we would do the Startup Alley for the first maybe 2 or 3 years, 2 or 3 shows, so a year and a half-ish. And then I've been going back mostly to just have meetings, but also to check out upcoming technology, things like that. And it's a good place to be and bounce off some ideas off people that, you're doing something similar to, or obviously we try to market to a lot of brokers. And so it's good for us to talk to brokers and see what they're doing and what kind of trends they're following, to see how our products would fit in. So yeah, it's always been, I think, beneficial to go. Obviously you and I met there. So things like that. And everybody who's doing something, or anyone who's doing something creative or innovative in real estate tech is there.
It's mandatory just to kind of stay on top of what's happening, right? And we said many times, and it's kind of a cliche, but it's those conversations in the hallways or maybe at a bar in the lobby in Las Vegas that where the best things happen, right?
Yeah, and that was a blessing and a curse. I feel like every time I tried to walk back to my room to go to sleep, it was you'd bump into somebody else, and there happened to be a bar right next to the elevator, and so then you'd end up there for a while, and then you bump into somebody else, and it was a lot of late nights. I heard that some of the Inman people might not have been too happy about their early morning attendance due to all the late nights there, but I made it. I don't know.
Yeah, I did too. I was an ambassador, so I had no choice. We had to roll in. So I like to find out where guests are from, and I know you have a New England background, and so let's talk about that a little bit. First of all, whereabouts are we talking? Massachusetts? Where did you grow up?
So I actually grew up in West Hartford, Connecticut, and it's a great town. They've completely transformed the downtown area since I've left. It's tons of bars and restaurants. I really can't think of another place that you could walk to so many excellent bars and restaurants and within probably just a square mile or two. Great place to go if you are ever in the area. And they're doing a good job there. And then I went to college in New Hampshire at a school called Colby Sawyer. I went to school for business, and then I ended up back home for a little bit after college, and then ended up in Boston for where I spent about 5 years before moving out to California.
I always bring up sports a little bit. So you grew up in Connecticut. Does that mean you have to choose between? Is it just pure? Is it Yankees all the way, or do you have a choice? What do you do there?
Well, I think that's probably my biggest weakness is I don't care about sports.
Awesome.
And I think that it happened because of just coming from Connecticut. And it's like, growing up, half my friends and family would have a Boston Red Sox hat on. The other half would have a Yankees hat on. And my family originally was from Ohio, so I'd have a Cleveland Indians hat on. And then it got to the point where I just couldn't keep track. And yeah, going to Boston after growing up in Connecticut, I remember the first time I saw a Patriots game at a bar, and I was like, oh, this is why people, this is like, everybody cares about this team here. And yeah, in Connecticut, you're kind of torn in between the two. And the only team we had was the Hartford Whalers, the hockey team. And I was a fan until probably, I don't know, when I was in elementary school or whenever, and then they shut them down. So that was the last taste I had of a hometown professional level team.
All right. Well, look, I think in the bigger scheme of things, it's a good thing. You have more time to work on your projects, more time to code, more time to build stuff if you're not involved in that other stuff.
Yeah, that could be.
Now, I do research as I prepare for each podcast, and there were some interesting stories about you and your entrepreneurial spirit as a child that I discovered. So why don't you share with the listeners, one of those stories?
It's hard to pick just one.
We can do two. We got time.
Okay. My parents, my dad has always had his own company, and my mom has always kind of pushed me to get out and do something constructive was a very common phrase in the house. So I think, the very first one I could think of was I remember rolling a wagon around with virgin margaritas and selling them door to door in maybe first grade. And that wagon stuck with me through elementary school and going door to door selling car washes, things like that. And you're lucky that I didn't wash your car at that age, but it was I was kept busy with things like that, and I think that's when finally when I figured out how to use a computer, I realized I didn't have to drag a wagon around. There were a lot of other ways to, come up with online companies and things like that, and then I was hooked.
Yeah, you're the right age where you hit middle school, and jumping on a PC and playing with some code or something was something you could already do, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And
yeah,
we always had my neighbor across the street growing up was in IT, and I would get his old computers that were very old, and I would constantly have to be fixing them. And so I think, just to get it to turn on, I would have to basically fix something every time. And so I think that's where I ended up getting some of it out of necessity, just to, yeah. And then, I was very into skateboarding, probably as a result of not having a sports team to look up to. I, ended up skateboarding, skiing, all that kind of stuff. And the second digital cameras came out, I was obsessed with cameras, and that was, probably in middle school or so. And that's when I really started trying to find ways to put the pictures online, and then build websites to host them, things like that.
Do you remember the first website that you built for money, that someone actually paid you to build them a site?
So I think it was this woman who was probably 95 years old and had a book that she wrote, and it was a children's book, and she had these illustrations done. I couldn't for the life of me remember what the book was called, but the illustrations were incredible. She hired some very famous illustrator, and the illustrator also illustrated the website in obviously his style. So I was able to turn that into the book website and allow people to buy her book online. And so I think that was one of the first ones I did for money for somebody else. But even dating back to the first website, I remember making was they used to have this .tk. I don't know if you remember that, but that was so that was, if you really didn't want to buy a .com, .tk was the free website builder in the days. Also GeoCities, all those kinds of things. And basically they would advertise on your website, which I saw some questionable ads on there at some points, but so I had a skateboard website on there, just my friends and I, skateboarding. And then I also got into selling skateboards online through some affiliate program. We would have some link to skateboard stores and things like that. And my friends would buy the skateboards through the website and we'd get commission off of them, things like that. So
what year are we talking here?
this is, let's see, this is probably 2001, 2002.
I mean, that's way early in the game to be doing transactions on the internet, I think, wasn't it? I mean, it really was.
It was. And I mean, I was obsessed with eBay too. And so, so going over to trying to do this on the sites that I had was something I always tried to do. And I mean, it was quite the poor user experience. And my friends are probably mostly my customers or people in chat rooms, which is really the only other way you could get your name out there in those days.
Right.
But yeah, so I kind of kept on that path of focused on building websites that I could show pictures of skiing, skateboarding, snowboarding, and then have some kind of element of e-commerce attached to it. That's the most focused way I've ever put it. But in the time, it was kind of just like whatever I could figure out how to put on the page as a link, I would do. I couldn't be too proud of the actual design or anything like that.
Even today, if you walk by a house and there's a skateboard in an empty pool, are you going in?
I've never encountered that in my life. Yeah, I think most of the time on the East Coast, people didn't really have in-ground pools. And if they did, I don't know, they'd be filled with snow in the winter. So
that's true. That's a Southern California kid me coming out.
Yeah, I know. Now that I live out here, it's funny because when I turned 30, I decided to buy myself a skateboard because there was a skate park by my house that had a bowl like that, and I had never skateboarded in a bowl. And I grew up skateboarding all the time, but had never skateboarded in a bowl. So at this stage, 30, I probably hadn't skateboarded in 12 years or more.
Wow.
Shortboarded, I've longboarded a lot through my 20s, but not the short boards for tricks and stuff. So, but I figured, okay, I used to do it like 8 hours a day. I could pick this up, and I was dead wrong, and I busted my ass. Pardon my French.
The first thing you learn how to do when you skateboard is fall, right? You got to learn to fall the right way.
Yeah. Jerry Seinfeld had a good quote that always stuck with me. He's like, whenever I see a skateboarder, I always think that kid's going to be okay. And, it's just because all they do is fall. And then occasionally, something works out. But yeah, so right. This time I didn't really, I haven't gone back since my 30th birthday. I'm almost 32. So
stick to the skis.
Yeah.
That'll be better for
luckily
you.
I got a pretty looking skateboard, so I'll hang it on the wall. My
there you go.
12-year-old self would be quite disappointed in me.
Well, so you mentioned you attended Colby Sawyer College, business degree. You're going to do something you're going to start a company while you're in school. Let's talk about your first gig after school. What did you do? Did you start a company right away? Or was there something in between?
I continued doing all this stuff through high school and college, and I would say during college was the least I was involved in an actual trying to start new web companies or new companies. I did a lot more freelance in college. In high school, I would say one of the last ones I did that was notable was one of the ski websites ended up getting a tremendous amount of traffic, and we were printing our own T-shirts in our graphics lab, just with our own logos and things like that. And we hosted the first 3D skiing game that some kids built, and it was really cool. The level of detail, I wouldn't be surprised if it's still around or maybe on Xbox now, but we were the sole hosts of it, the website I had, and we were getting like 200,000 unique visitors a month or something insane like that. Wow. And I didn't renew it because the domain came up, and it was, I think, $20 a year at the time. And We didn't renew it. And yeah, later on we found out how much that kind of traffic was worth. So that was a tough one. But then, yeah, in high school, later in high school, I was doing, I had a graphic design and web design company, and we're doing small businesses, things like that, web directories. And then through college, I continued doing freelance in that space. We tried to do some property rental websites actually, around, when I graduated. We tried doing some property rental because I remember renting a VRBO when I graduated high school to have all our friends out to Rhode Island for a week. I remember using VRBO, thinking of how backwards it was, or contacting these vacation rental real estate companies, and couldn't believe how poor the experience was. And I'm 18 years old, paying in cash because all my friends paid for this property in cash. And so we started building a property management website then. I remember it was called rentchamp.com. Back when you could get a 2-syllable domain,
right,
that wasn't KoaWare.
Right.
So yeah, after college, I ended up trying to, I have enthused.com, and my friends and I, a bunch of skiers and snowboarders, we just tried to create some kind of a blog on that, but it was mostly for fun. And I had a couple e-commerce type jobs around that period of time after college.
That's all leading towards that very first. Well, I don't want to call it. You started up a lot of little companies. You started a lot of things. But is this where Remark Visions comes in?
Kind of, yeah. So I actually, after college, I lived at home for maybe the first year in Connecticut, and I ended up in this SEO position. So I was basically working on search engine marketing campaigns, and mostly on the organic side though. So a little bit of the less of the SEM, more of the SEO, trying to build links for people's websites, a lot of lawyers, doctors, real estate agents, local businesses, things like that. And I quickly knew that I wanted to move to either New York or Boston, so I could get a little more involved in some startups that were a little higher tech and had their own products. And so I ended up in Boston working for a company called Gazelle. It's an e-commerce platform where you basically go on and say how much your iPhone is worth, and they send you a box. And so at the time I did that in Boston for about 6 to 9 months, and they ended up laying off about half their employees shortly after I moved there. So I somehow got a few months of severance and was able to kind of figure things out. And I saw some local people doing video tours, and this is right as soon as I was getting involved in video. And I worked for another production company for about a year, mostly doing photos. And then once I saw video tours becoming more popular in the area, I decided that's what I wanted to focus on, was video tours. And I ended up deciding that it was a good time to take the chance and do that. And things worked out pretty well. And that's how I got started on the Remark Vision side. So Remark Visions actually started as Remark Video Tours, and Video Tours Boston. I couldn't decide on the name, and then ended up being Remark Visions.
Now, KoaWare comes not long after that. Is that the case?
Correct, yeah. As Remark Visions grew, we had a lot of content and a lot of photographers that were starting to contribute, and even hired my sister when she graduated college, and then some others started coming on board the team. And we had a lot of issues in the early days delivering photos to real estate agents. Dropbox is too complicated for what we were doing, and a lot of people were downloading the thumbnails, or they didn't know what a zip file was, things like that. And they also wanted property websites, in a way to just see all their listings in one place. So I started building our property, or our content management system from there for all of our content. And eventually we built in the booking system to that, and got to the point where I decided I could really focus on the production company and build that out and hire a ton of photographers, or take the software and start licensing that out to other photographers around the country. And so that's when KoaWare started, was when we decided to do that with the software, and see who else was out there that was taking real estate photos that didn't have a platform to deliver their content on. Our platform at the time was pretty advanced for the level of production we were actually doing. So we got a lot of interest from photographers when we first started KoaWare. The biggest challenge with that was a lot of these photography companies, they had their own business rules that we naively tried to accommodate each unique circumstance when we first started. And it just led to an endless cycle of development for features that one person was going to use, or that one company was going to use. So it was definitely bumpy getting that platform going. And then at the end of the day, all the photographers would be like, okay, so yeah, you can, automate our invoicing and automate all the scheduling and things like that, but what does the property website look like? And so we're like, all right, well, let's just hide all of those other features and give people the property websites. And so that's what we focused on for a while.
The current version of KoaWare today, let's talk about that real quick. It is that world of network platforms, right? That seems to be exploding today, and it has been for the last maybe 5-7 years. But the ability to connect professionals with other professionals, right? Am I on the right track there?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's where we ended up with all of this, was instead of trying to build our platform for real estate photographers to connect with their customers into this white labeled solution for each one of them, we decided to just make it a marketplace. And so photographers can connect their calendars. They can set their own pricing. They can set their travel radius. And so an agent can go on and they can compare them based on their portfolio, their availability, their reviews, and then they can book instantly. We boiled it all down, and it's just the photographer gets their own page where they deliver the content, and the agent can download it on their own dashboard. And no matter which photographer the agent uses, all the content is delivered in one place. All the property websites look the same. So it's not like you're scrambling all over to see, okay, I use this photographer for this listing, so it's going to be emailed to me, the photos, and I use this other photographer, this other one, that this guy uses Dropbox or WeTransfer or something. So it just consolidates everything. And also real estate photographers have started to fragment things a lot more, of making the purchase experience for an agent a lot more confusing, where, there's this one photography company that will sell you 5 photos for $200, and then the next one will sell you 50 for $150. And it's very hard to compare and contrast and find the best person for your particular job. So we decided bringing everybody together was the best way to do it.
Do you find that there's competition maybe that occurs when that happens?
Yeah.
In a market?
Yeah. Which has been very interesting. We do see that, one, a lot of these photographers, the ones that we got in the beginning were the ones that we could find and invite to the platform. And then as time kind of has gone by, we started getting photographers that even if we Googled them, we couldn't find them. But they have great work. But they just, maybe they focus on weddings, but they have all the equipment to shoot real estate, and they have the availability during the week. And so they're a great fit to be a real estate photographer. So you have these people kind of coming out of the woodwork that are fully capable, just as capable as anybody else who shoots real estate. But then also people do seem to compete on price a little bit. And then also, things like their portfolio, which agents can browse in there. So it's really interesting to see how things are developing, and people are trying to offer more services, things like that.
Yeah, it seems like it's all good for the real estate world, right? I mean, if you had to kind of look at the overall net benefit, it's huge. They now get to do something they never had to do before. They never could do it before.
Exactly.
Compare. Yeah,
yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. Let's. You're passionate about photography. Let's talk about that a little bit. I know you've seen the websites, the bad MLS photo websites and all that stuff, but talk about why the high quality images are so important. I mean, in your opinion, right, as someone who's passionate about that topic, and you're talking to a room full of realtors, let's say, what do you tell them?
Well, our attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. If you're looking through Zillow, you're more likely to click a home with a more attractive photo, and especially more likely to click a home if it's got something like a virtual twilight photo. It's the featured photo, or real twilight, which I don't think many people do anymore. But I think that the attention span is just a major factor. Of course, if a home is beautiful and it has poor photos, you'll still get people through the door, but you probably won't have as much competition when it comes to selling that home and buyers. So might not get all the money that you could have gotten if you had professional photos. So I think that it's a huge thing. It's pretty much a must. I think most brokerages and agents around the country have realized that is a major benefit. Then Zillow recently is starting to do this, where if you have a video or their 3D home, which is a new service that people are able to provide to real estate agents, or real estate agents can make 3D homes themselves right on the Zillow 3D app. But that will actually boost your exposure. So let's say for the first week, you have just your regular photos up there, started off with your virtual twilight picture or some lead shot. If you're in the city, you might not use the virtual twilight. Maybe you'll use just like a really nice photo of the interior. But then a week later, you're not in the new home section of Zillow, or however long it is. Ways to bump it up are by adding a video tour. Then Zillow will say, "Oh, this home was recently updated," and they'll bump you up. And then you can do a Zillow 3D shortly after that. And obviously Zillow is not the only company that you deal with, but I mean, just releasing regular content until you sell something, I think is a must.
Look, Alex, everybody today is a photographer. We all carry pretty decent cameras with us everywhere we go, right? Not bad cameras, at least, compared to the digital cameras you first started with shooting skateboarding. Mm-hmm. So give me one or two things that you see just everyday people with their phones doing absolutely wrong when they're taking a picture.
Well, one, don't put your thumb over the lens.
Okay, that's a good one.
Yep. My mom recently sent me a picture of a seal, and it was her thumb actually in the foreground.
All right.
But yeah, but in all seriousness, I think the biggest thing I see when people take their own photos is they're crooked. And even if you don't notice it, because you don't do this for a living, subconsciously you're less attracted to a crooked photo. So that's the number one thing. Make sure it's straight. You have tools on your phone to make sure it's level. I don't know if there's an actual level on the camera, maybe the new one on the iPhone. But in any event, even if you have the grid, you can line it up with something like the gutters of the house. If you're taking an exterior photo, just make sure that the gutters are in line with the horizontal grid. The second thing would be the verticals of the picture. So not only you want to make sure it's not crooked, but you want to make sure that you're not tilting the camera up or down too far. In a lot of cases, it's unavoidable. If the house is on a hill and you're looking up, or if it's a tall building, you're going to have to break that rule. But for the most part, getting it square and having your camera completely level, you'll see that the house doesn't look like it's falling backwards or falling forwards. Those two things are very important. If you have an iPhone, there's a little less you can do in terms of editing the colors and the lighting. So plan to take the picture when the sun is hitting the right side of the house, especially this time of year as the days get shorter. That window's smaller during the middle of the day or whenever, depending on the direction of the home, things like that.
Cool. Let me ask you. There are some companies out there doing some crazy stuff with images, right? You mentioned earlier the virtual twilight image, right? What comes to mind for me is Box Brownie, and I think you know those guys, right? You've met them at the conferences.
Yeah.
What's your take on that? I mean, how far can that go?
I think it's brilliant. I think that's a major factor in this. To give you an example, I met the Box Brownie guys a few years ago at Inman, actually, but I've had my production company and I've been in this business for probably about 8 years now almost. And I used to have to edit all of our pictures and from all of our photographers, and it was very, very hard to get consistent quality, even if it was me editing and I had my own presets and things like that, because the volume of photos you get from a full day of real estate shooting times however many photographers you might have is just too much to do as a single person. So you have to train some people, and a lot of these people are overseas, or their Box Brownie has found an amazing way to build a network of these people who do the photo editing all around the world. Might be some in the U.S., but there might be some over in the Philippines or South America. They find the best ones to do the jobs as fast as possible. So that enables real estate photographers to kind of have a life. And although it might be expensive, I did the editing myself for maybe the first 4 or 5 years. Yeah, my life was miserable. So the second I found somebody I could outsource to, quality was better than anything I could do myself. It's just worth it. And in terms of agents and how they can use technologies like that, there are so many uses. One of my favorite ones that Box Brownie does is the declutter, but then also the virtual renovations, things that serve legitimate purposes, and you couldn't really do it in any other way. And it's beneficial, I think, to the seller as well, or the buyer too, because you might not see a home for what it's actually worth. If the current tenant's a hoarder, they can remove all of that for you and their declutter feature. So things like that, I think, show the home in its most accurate state when it's empty. There's a lot for more beyond what just Box Brownie's doing. I think with 3D, 3D is one of those things that's been very slow to catch on. We're seeing it's a great tool for agents to get listings, to win their listing presentation along with video. If you offer listing 3D or video in a listing presentation, you're more likely to get the listing over somebody who doesn't offer that. So that's a good thing for the agent. But then down the road, what we're going to see is the 3D technology, just in terms of the 360 images and the measurements combined, is going to have almost unlimited possibilities in terms of automation, and automating the listing process, automating your listing descriptions. I mean, that's all possible with the technology now, and replacing cabinets or replacing furniture. Those are things that are coming down the road a little bit more, but everything is possible with the technology that's being used. It's just a matter of how these companies that are offering these services, by me saying offering these services, I mean the camera manufacturers or the people processing these 3D tours like Matterport or Zillow. What they do with this data is there's going to be a tremendous value in that. So that's something to keep an eye out for.
Well, Alex, I've had you here well over the half hour I asked of your time, so I'm going to ask you the same question I've asked every guest, right, since day one, and that's, if you could give one piece of advice to a new agent just starting out, what would it be?
I think I said this already, but I would say if you're going for a listing presentation, obviously you have to do professional photos, but add in the fact that you'll do video and or Matterport if they if they use you to list the home. Because we've seen so many agents get listings just because they offer video and the other people pitching to that seller don't offer video. So I think it's a great way to get new business. And then make sure you use the video too. Put it on YouTube and try to get some views on it. But either way, if you get the listing, that's not a bad thing either.
If someone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can go to our website, KoaWare.com, KoaWare.com. Chances are my face will pop up in the bottom corner. And also you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. And those are the best ways to get in contact.
Is KoaWare available all around the country, as far as for real estate photography?
So KoaWare is currently available in Atlanta, Denver, and Southern California, but we do have a number of Matterport providers around the country. So if you are interested in us coming to your area, if you're a broker, an agent who gets a bunch of listings, it's very, very easy for us to get photographers on board in a matter of days or weeks to get some kind of a market going. So I would love to hear from you if you're interested in getting your market going on KoaWare, trying it out. And we're also looking for agents or brokers to do some case studies with as well.
Alex, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. It was a pleasure chatting with you and getting your story. And maybe I'll see you soon at another real estate conference somewhere.
Thanks, Bill. And I will keep listening to you on the real estate sessions.